Chris, he joined Southern Arizona Rescue Association in 2014. 11 years he's been with this group. He has participated in 145 search and rescue missions with SARA. 145. He has served and is serving on the board of directors. He has become a trainer for search and rescue, not just for SARA, I'm quite proud of him, but for sheriff and police departments in Southern Arizona and even beyond on the principles and guidelines of search and rescue. He has gone on disaster missions. He's even caused some disasters where he's gone. I'm just so proud of this guy. He is one of the coolest guys to work with. Would you give a Northminster welcome to Chris Yamanaka?
Thank you, Andy. It's great to be here. And I want to thank you for having me. I did this once before for the men's power breakfast, but it's been quite a while since I've talked about this. And I'm always happy to get out and tell people about the work that we do in the community. Feel free to ask questions at any time. I don't mind being interrupted. I'm going to talk a little bit about the organization and its history, what it takes to become a member of it, and some of the types of missions that we do and some of the different services that we offer. So just to define search and rescue is the emergency service called upon when people need assistance in a wilderness or austere environment. So if you're up in the mountains or out in the desert or in a river and you need assistance, you call search and rescue. A search, we differentiate between a search and a rescue. A search is where we don't know the location and condition of our subject, and it's definitely an emergency. A rescue is where the location we think is known, also an emergency, but sometimes the reporting party will tell us where they think they are, and that's not correct. And so we have a saying that every rescue begins as a search, because we need to actually ascertain where the subject is. So in the state of Arizona, in terms of who performs search and rescue, by statute, it is the responsibility of the sheriff's department in each county. And most counties have a volunteer component as well. We're one of the largest ones in the state, maybe the largest. And we work closely with the Pima County Sheriff's Department. We also, besides the kind of the ground pounders, we call them, are the people who are in SARA, but we have other component groups. We have a dog team, a mounted team, divers, and some others. Some of the other agencies that are involved with search and rescue in Southern Arizona are the Department of Public Safety. They have a helicopter team. They have helicopters in Flagstaff, Phoenix, and Tucson, and we often will call upon them for assistance with extricating a subject. We also work with a lot of local fire departments. If just based on 911 protocols and how calls are routed, oftentimes when somebody calls in and there's a medical issue, it can get routed to the fire department. And so often we'll see rural metro at the trailhead. They may or may not go in, but will go, because they can only go in so far. They're not really equipped for an extended mission in the mountains. But we work with fire departments quite a bit. We also work with Davis-Monthan, principally for air assets, and also customs. We call upon them for air assets as well. When there are some counties in the state where they don't have a kind of a robust search and rescue infrastructure, so we will go and assist them if called upon. And sometimes, even if you have a robust infrastructure, but a search has gone on for an extended number of days, people are getting tired and you're wearing out the resources that you have locally, we'll call upon other counties to come and help us. So mutual aid to other counties and all that's coordinated through the Arizona Department of Emergency Management and Military Affairs. So we'll put in a call, the sheriffs will put in a call to the state, basically put out the request for aid, and other counties will come if they can. As I mentioned, we work most often with the Sheriff's Department in Pima County, and they have a dedicated search and rescue unit. There's 7 deputies on that unit. On a typical mission, a deputy will always be what's called the incident commander. He's the guy in charge. And we will run the operation, we'll provide the human resources for the mission, but the incident commander is always a deputy in southern Arizona. So on a typical mission, we'll have multiple agencies involved. And it could be fire, certainly the deputies and ourselves. That's a picture. We have trucks. We have four trucks, 3 trucks and a Hummer that we use. These trucks carry all of our equipment, and they have lots of communication gear, lots of radios in them. We have Starlink, so we'll use Starlink in a truck so that we have internet connectivity on a mission. So in terms of the history of SARA, has anybody been to Mount Wrightson or Mount Baldy? This is down in the Santa Ritas. And in 1958, there was a group of 6 Boy Scouts who were dropped off on November 15th by their parents to hike up Mount Wrightson. Weather was good at the time, but as the day wore on and as they progressed toward the top, clouds rolled in, and it was the worst winter snowstorm that southern Arizona had seen for decades. There actually was 3 to 7 feet of snow up there. So out of the 6 Boy Scouts, 2 of them they were young. I mean, the youngest member was 11 years old, so they were pretty young. This was a time, right, a different time, but parents did that. They dropped their kids off and said, "You want to go hike up Mount Baldy? Go ahead." But unfortunately, so there were 2 younger ones and one of the older guys, or two older guys. One of the older guys and 2 of the younger ones, the 2 younger ones got tired and they stopped short of the summit. And those 3, with great difficulty, eventually made it back down to the bottom by nightfall. But the other 3 did not, and they continued toward the summit. Unfortunately, they perished, and it launched really the largest search and rescue operation that the county had ever seen. At one point, there were 750 searchers looking for these boys. And obviously, anytime kids were involved, there's a greater urgency to the situation. But the search was not well organized. We had troops from Fort Huachuca and ranchers and lots of volunteer untrained resources. And so, as I said, they didn't find them until December 4th, so I think it was about 3 weeks. And they found them, obviously, in a place where they weren't searching. It was off of the trail in the snow. If you're familiar with that hike, you hike up a couple miles to a place called Josephine Saddle. And I actually took this picture, but this is the monument to the 3 boys who perished. And they came down to the saddle and took a wrong turn and there's 6 different trails that branch off from this particular saddle. They took a wrong turn and perished off of it was the Temporal Gulch Trail, if any of you are familiar with that. So that was an unfortunate outcome. But out of this, there was a recognition that there was a need for the county to organize and develop some kind of search and rescue capacity. And that's when our organization was founded. And we still have a member, Marvin Stafford, who participated in that search. He was an Explorer Scout at the time. But that's how we were formed. We initially were, I think before that we were like a kind of a urban, I don't know, like fire evacuation. I don't know, we had some limited role in an urban setting, but after this search, we decided to focus ourselves on search and rescue. So you can see our mission statement that we're dedicated to saving lives through wilderness search and rescue, but also beyond that, we do a lot of safety education. So we'll go out and do public speaking events like this, and we're at things like, we've been at the Tucson Festival of Books sometimes. There's a number of like health fairs and events throughout the community where we'll have a presence, and we try and spread the word on smart practices when it comes to hiking and being outdoors. These are our different component groups. As I mentioned, we're one part of it, but besides the ground pounders, we have the diver team, PCSRD. SARD is our rescue dogs, so we have dogs that will, they can track, you can give them if we have a missing person, we'll get a scent article, like a piece of clothing, and the dog can track, we give them the scent article and they'll track based on that scent. We also have dogs that are just trackers that look for lost people, and then we have what we call cadaver dogs. They're especially trained to go out and locate deceased subjects. We have a horse unit, SAMSAR. There are times when horses can be quite helpful, not only in searching, but also like in Bear Canyon, where they can get in, and if we have somebody with a lower extremity injury, like a broken ankle, we can put them on a horse, and that's just a much easier way to get them out. We have a Civil Air Patrol component and a posse unit, which is really not really in existence anymore. But just wanted you to be aware that it's not just ground pounders, we have other specialized teams as well. Some of the things that we've done since 1958, we participated in over 5,000 SARA missions and assisted over 10,000 people. The types of missions that we do are searches, where we don't know the subject, rescues, where we do know their location. We also do body recoveries. We have a technical rope team, so if if somebody is hanging on a cliff and they're in trouble, we can go down and get them. Our technical rope team also does a lot of work with if a vehicle goes over the side on Mountain Lemon Highway. That's another one where we're called in to help get them out. We have a helicopter team. Yeah.
So, with all those abilities, is it typical for a search and rescuer to be able to do all those things? Or are there specializations?
There are specialized teams,
Okay.
and there's lots and lots of training involved and different certifications.
Oh, yeah.
We all have to maintain a number of certifications in order to be what's called field qualified.
Okay.
We can go out into the field and help people. And I'll talk a little bit about that. But yeah, we have a dedicated technical rope rescue team. We have a dedicated helicopter team.
Okay.
So yes. My colleague that Andy mentioned, one of the things I do is I'm a trainer, and the colleague that I train all of our new candidates with, her name is SARA also, but she's a national expert on cave rescue. And so that's another thing. Believe it or not, we have some caves in southern Arizona. It's not something that we do very often, but we still train on it. So we can offer that. Swiftwater Rescue is a certification that a lot of us have, but that really has become the province of fire departments. They're the ones. This is where somebody drives into the flooded wash, right? They shouldn't have, and usually it's the fire department. We do have some swiftwater situations though with washes and streams like Tankerverde Falls and Bear Canyon, you know, have a flash flood where they go from nothing to, you know, a flash flood in no time at all. Incident management is another service that we offer. I'll talk a little bit more about that. That's part of my kind of bread and butter. We'll do urban search sometimes up in the foothills. We've done searches where it's kind of a desert environment. There was one time, if you remember the Pintors who were members here, there was one time I was doing a search for a woman in the Craycroft north of River area in that neighborhood. So I was poking around in a wash, and out comes this guy asking me, you know, what am I doing in his backyard? And it was Oscar. So it was kind of funny. And then, as I mentioned, we do a lot of PIO or PR work and educational type presentations. So these are the different services that we offer. Let me tell you a little bit about the organization of the group. You'll notice that I'm wearing an orange shirt, but we also have green shirts, yellow shirts, and besides that. So in order to join SARA, we accept people once a year, and we get a lot of interest. We have 2 orientations, and we'll typically have about 120 people between the two that are at least express interest. And then they have to fill out an application, and we take them on a hike, and that's our interview process, is a hike. And it's in August, so it's hot. We give them weight. And we just see how they operate in those conditions. And it's not that long, but it's a good test. And we do that if you're familiar with the Molino Basin area or prison camp or in Hirabayashi, that area, we'll do it in there. So it's still very hot, and it's a good test. So we talk to them while they're hiking and while they're schlepping a 300-foot rope, and just see how they're doing. That's our interview process, and then from that we'll take about 30 people into SARA, and then they are our candidates. And the training process for them, if they need our advanced medical training, it's about 6 months. So it's quite a commitment.
How many leave after that first hike, or how many do you not accept?
So we'll have probably 40 or so on the hike, and we take. It all depends on how many applicants we have, but and then we'll winnow it down from there. So we'll all get together afterwards and talk about how people did and what our impressions were of them. And so that's about a 6-month process. One of the things that I do is help teach our new candidates in the fall. And then if they need, some people come in with an existing medical certification. We have our minimum requirement to be out in the field and to be providing medical care is an EMR or emergency medical responder qualification. That's the bare minimum, which is 1 notch below an EMT. I'm an EMT, and a number of us are EMTs as well. We have a few medics, a few nurses who do that professionally. So we have a good spectrum of medical care that we can provide. Once they've graduated from their training, then they are working towards becoming a full-blown rescuer. Candidates or yellow shirts cannot go out into the field on a mission unless they have a rescuer, an orange shirt, accompanying them. And then once the requirements to become a rescuer, they have to do a whole range of additional trainings, some of which I teach, like land navigation. I teach them how to use map and compass. We also use GPS apps for tracking people. So I'll teach them all about GPS and mapping and how to use a compass and how to navigate. But they have a range of trainings, and they have to do 25 missions, and they have to have 50 hours in the field. And so that clock starts ticking as soon as you're at the trailhead, as soon as you go out and deploy on the mission, then that starts the count on field hours. So 25 missions, 50 field hours, and 10 or 12 different trainings. So currently we have 198 members of varying levels of activity. We have 39 qualified rescuers or orange shirts, and we have 36 yellow shirts or candidates who are working towards becoming a full-blown rescuer. And then we have 46 basic members. These are sometimes these are folks who've been around a while and who are no longer active in the field. And sometimes they are people who only join to provide support function. So remember our truck that I showed you? When we're on a mission and a truck is at the trailhead, we'll have somebody maybe manning the radios or recording important information. There's always a lot of documentation that's required for a mission. And so we'll have the green shirts are the ones who will assist with that. But that's the basic makeup of our organization right now. Sometimes we have people who complete the training and then we never see them again. So we're actually doing pretty well staffing-wise, but it's kind of a constant. We're all volunteer. There are no paid individuals with SARA, but it's a big time commitment. So we always really try and make sure that people are mentally prepared. Besides being physically prepared, but also mentally prepared for the kind of time commitment required. And even once you become, I have to, as a orange shirt, I still have to recertify on our technical rope systems every year. I've got to renew my EMT every 2 years. There's a whole range of certifications that we have to maintain on an ongoing basis. Michelle?
What did the posse do, and why don't they exist anymore?
Well, I think it was like a mounted unit that kind of folded into our existing horse unit is really what it was. So.
But they don't exist anymore?
No, not really. Marie?
Do you, basically in the group you're in, do you stay in southern Arizona, or can you be on call throughout the whole state?
Yeah, remember when I was talking about mutual aid, so if another county needs us, then we can, whomever is available will go, and I've done that. I've gone to Graham County, worked in Santa Cruz. The Santa Ritas are in that the county line is right there in Madera Canyon, and they don't have a really robust search and rescue capacity. They don't have a lot of dedicated resources, so when stuff goes on down there, we'll go down and help them with that. So yes, we'll go anywhere in the state if we need to. Yeah?
Can you tell us about what you consider your most difficult rescue that you've been involved in?
Sure. I'm going to talk a little bit about some
right.
different types of rescues. So I'll get to that.
Is there a time of year that's most challenging in terms of the number of rescues?
So we're in a unique situation. If you think about it, we have 4 mountain ranges around us, and they're pretty close to Tucson. So there's lots of different opportunities for people to get in trouble. Probably the summer is the big one, when people just are not prepared for the heat, and they don't take sufficient water. So operating in those conditions. I mean, I can just tell you about one right now. If you recall, there were some Germans visiting from out of town. They were at a convention and they were staying at Ventana Canyon Resort. This was probably, I think this was 2016 or 17. And 3 of them started out early in the morning hiking up Ventana Canyon and got in trouble. They called in. We went out looking for them that first day. This was a pretty tragic day. One of them perished. We had another call over in Finger Rock, which is another canyon over, and had a fatality there from a cardiac event out in the heat. We continued, there were 3 in the party, one of them made it out. We continued, we found the one fatality the first day, I went back out. I was inserted by helicopter with one other person up to the top of Ventana Canyon and told, work your way back down and search. And we actually had to pull out one of our own rescuers had to be pulled out, short hauled out of the canyon. It got to the point where it was so hot, it was like 120 or so. You know, you're carrying 50 pounds on you, and I couldn't stand in one place. You know, it was just so, my boots were hot. They actually sent in a helicopter to get us out because they were just concerned about our safety. One other individual perished that day as well, and we didn't find him until the next morning. But that was a difficult one, just because of the heat. So that's kind of really challenging. But also at winter, right? We'll do stuff. People forget that the north-facing side of the Catalinas, the snow doesn't melt as quickly. And so people will go hiking on the northern side of the Catalinas on trails like the Butterfly Trail or the Green Mountain Trail and get in trouble, especially if they get out there after dark. And so we'll be operating in kind of alpine winter conditions as well sometimes. Is there a question? Yeah.
What got you interested in this?
Well, a couple of things. Number one, I hiked all over southern Arizona. Actually, for those of you who have been around North Minster for a while, you remember that post-Katrina, we had a big disaster response that I developed. So I was doing a lot of that disaster response work down in New Orleans. I went down 11 times, and we sent 9 teams down over the several years. But that really intrigued me in terms of, maybe. And I started going to the SARA. We have a general meeting, a monthly meeting. I started going to those and learning about the organization. And so that was kind of how I got interested.
Were you hiking when you broke your ankle?
I was. I was on the Mid-Spring Trail. Took a wrong step.
And then the rescuers came and got you?
No, I walked out. I just asked a buddy of mine to carry my pack, but I walked out. And then I had to have surgery on it. So this, and I'll answer more questions in a little bit. But, so just in terms of last year, this was actually kind of a down year for us, 84 missions. We often will be doing 100 to 120 missions in a year. But that just gives you a sense of how many people were involved and the hours in particular. It's about 4 hours a mission typically, and we typically have, our average number of people per mission is about 15. And it gives you see the breakdown on what we do, half and half, search and rescue, and then a few body recoveries or other things. The other could be things like an evidentiary search where our diver teams, sometimes people will drive a car into Lakeside Lake and we'll need to go, our divers will need to go and get something out of the car and they drive it into the lake because they're trying to hide something, right? So those are the kind of the other missions that we might do. I'll show you this in a little bit, but it takes a lot of people. If we have an injured person and they're in what's called a Stokes basket and we're wheeling them out and getting them out, it's a very physically demanding. And so we need a lot of people to cycle through when we're trying to get somebody out. And this is just a sense of some of the other things that we do for last year. I guess the thing I want to point out is just our total number of volunteer hours is over 26,000. So we have a lot of people putting in a lot of hours. As my wife will attest, it's almost like a second job. Something I love doing. So. Real quick, this is just for our new candidates. I talked about the training in the fall. Once they get in and we accept them, it's about 108 hours of training, another 107 for our emergency medical responder class, And that typically will take about a year before they get all that done. It's all taught in-house, all by volunteers. And so our volunteer instructors put in over 1,000 hours on a typical class. And then, as I mentioned, our field qualified rescuers are orange shirts. This is what we have to do. We have to keep our medical skills fresh. We have monthly trainings on different specialized topics like land navigation. I just ran an area search exercise out at SARA National Park West, which is a big exercise working with the deputies and the National Park Service. But that was teaching people basically how to search when you're looking. You have a defined search area, and we line up in a line and do what's called a grid search, and there are certain techniques involved. So, and then our rope skills. So this is all the kind of work that we just have to keep doing on an ongoing basis. There's lots of perishable skills and things that we don't always use very often, and so it's a challenge to keep up on them. Terry?
Chris, what's your oldest orange shirt that you work with?
Oldest?
Yeah.
He's probably in his 80s, but he may not. He doesn't go out in the field anymore, but I think he keeps up his certifications. But we have some guys who've been around for 50 plus years, so we have a lot of good institutional knowledge. In terms of how a search and rescue mission works, if they can call themselves 911 by themselves, or somebody else calls 911, or they're called they have family they're overdue, and they call in. Basically, the call comes into 911, and then it's routed to the sheriff's department, and they do an investigation and determine whether it's appropriate to call us out. As I mentioned, we use something called the Incident Command System, which is basically the framework on how we manage an incident, and that's true across the board. This is, without getting too far into the weeds, this is something that came out of post 9/11. The problems with interagency coordination post 9/11 led us to develop this Incident Command System, and that's the framework that all first responders use across the country on it's an all hazards approach. So whether it's a chemical spill, whether it's a wildfire, whether it's search and rescue, we're all using a common set of procedures and forms and a common language, and that's what the Incident Command System is. I mentioned that a deputy will be the incident commander, and if he decides that it's appropriate to call us out, we put out what's called a page, and we have an app, and we'll indicate that we're responding in that app. And you respond if you're available. You don't have to respond, but that's how it works. And then we'll send out one of our trucks to the scene, and they'll run the operations from the truck. In terms of just some typical rescues that we do, we're very active in Sabino and Bear Canyon. As you might imagine, that's very close to Tucson. Thousands of people visit there every year, so we do a lot of stuff in Bear Canyon. This is showing, if you can see it, this is the Stokes basket, and you can see we'll have, if the trail is wide enough, we'll have one person in the front, one person in the back, and one on each side. And we're wheeling that person out. Sometimes we'll call in an air asset to either hoist the person out or do what's called a short haul. A short haul is where we attach them to the end of a rope. Somebody else is also attending them, but we'll attach a basket to the end of a rope and literally just lift them out without bringing them into the helicopter. And then, as I mentioned, also we have our horse unit. This is an example of somebody coming out with a horse. This is a better shot of what it looks like when we're using a Stokes basket, which is basically like a litter on top of a wheel. And it's a titanium frame, that can be broken down, and we actually strap it to the back of our backpack, take it in, and then reassemble it. We take turns, we'll have to bring in the wheel as well. So we haul that in, disassemble, assemble it, put the subject in the basket, and then wheel them out like this. Just another shot of a Stokes basket. You can see here that when the trail is too narrow, it's even more challenging because all we can do is put one person on front and one person on the back. One thing that we'll do is we'll put what's called a tagline on it, where we put a rope on the back, and it's like our emergency brake. Somebody will have that rope. Tanqueray Falls, people familiar with Tanqueray Falls, and you know that that's a popular recreational area with not a lot of developed trails. There's a lot of social trails, but it's very steep, a lot of cliffs, and they've actually improved things over there some in terms of trails and safety, but it's another busy spot for us. And because of the cliffs and slippery rocks and intoxication and things like that, frequently, there's typically always injuries involved. There's a number of waterfalls out there, and in a flash flood situation in particular, it's very dangerous. There was one, this was another interesting experience for me. We had a subject who thought it was a good idea to go check out the main waterfall out there in a flash flood. It was raining, lightning, and there's actually a pool above the main falls that we call the washing machine, because that's how the currents are. We were called out. Me and one other guy were in there searching, and we had to be careful. Like, if there was an exposed section, we sent one of us at a time through it, so that if there's a landslide, only one of us would be taken out. At the same time, we've got a flash flood coming through the canyon, and lightning strikes on the other side of the canyon. So it was pretty hairy. That subject, we found him about 5 miles downstream. Actually, I think it was by the country club out there. So it's a dangerous area. When we're doing a short haul, we'll have this. We have our subject packaged here in a basket, and then at the DPS will help us with this, and we attach it to the end of a rope, and then basically lift them. And it's not a great distance. So if we're down in Tanqueray Canyon, we'll just bring them up to the top of the canyon, right? Or to a landing zone that's very close. That's a technique that we use. Wanted to illustrate, as I mentioned, this is Butterfly Trail. This is on the north side of the Catalinas, and people even, we haven't had much of a winter this year, but often, they think that everything looks good, great weather on this side, and they go on the north side of the mountain, and there's still snow there. And so, in this particular rescue, we had somebody who fell off the trail about 400 feet, and then we had to. This is an example also of we're using a rope system. So it's a pulley system there where we attach the Stokes basket to the technical rope system, and then we haul them out that way. These guys, the attendants, are strapped to the basket, and then we have a whole team up top that's just pulling them out. Sometimes, if the weather conditions are such, or environmental conditions are such, we may need to stay overnight with them. So if we go in and we can't get them out, there may be they're really injured, stokesing them out isn't an option. We have to bring in an air asset in the morning because they don't fly at night, or the weather's bad. We actually will basically camp out with them, make sure they're comfortable. We are prepared to sustain ourselves for 24 hours in the field. That's our basic requirement. So I'll carry besides for myself, I carry warmies or warm clothes for a subject. I carry extra water. I'll show you some of that in a second. But I have a bivvy, so we'll be prepared to support them throughout the night.
Do you ever get to call Sheila, tell her you're gonna be late?
I've had to do that before.
Are there any orange women?
Oh yes, yeah. It's a priority for us as an organization. We have many women who are in leadership positions. We had a president just a few years ago.
I assume the other colors too have women.
In fact, we had more women than men in our last candidate class. So.
What is the average age of candidates? A lot of them
You know,
younger?
they're typically younger, 20s and 30s. Yeah. This is I mentioned this was a mission where a car went over the side on Mount Lemon Highway at milepost 4, and we're short hauling them out on the right. And this is always where our technical system is required. If we're either pulling them up in a helicopter or bringing them up the side in a basket. Sometimes we have to do body recoveries, unfortunately, and this is just a shot. So this is the same Mount Wrightson where the Boy Scouts perished. We had to do, last year we had a hiker who perished up there in the snow. Just, again, not prepared for the conditions. And so we'll go in and get the body out.
How did you know they were there?
I think it was, I believe Santa Cruz we may have identified their position by drone actually. And then we saw that the subject was deceased and went in afterwards. Either that or Santa Cruz had gone in, but they weren't prepared to bring the body out.
Chris, is drone technology being used more and more for search?
Yeah, we have a drone team and certified pilots, and we have several drones that we'll use on a mission.
Huh.
There's a range of requirements and regulations around that we have to be cognizant of. But yes, we're more and more and we're doing things like we can we can take the video from the drone, put it on screen, and search that way.
Wow.
How are you funded?
We are funded through donations, and also we receive funding from the county. We're not exclusively funded by the county, but we receive a good portion of our funding through them.
Do you follow the stupid motorist law?
The stupid what?
Motorist law, you follow everybody from that?
No, we never, ever charge for our services. And we never want that to be a deterrent from people, deterring them from calling for help.
This was a long time ago when I saw this story in the local newspaper. Some woman had ridden along with the mules. She rode a mule down to the bottom of the canyon, and she categorically refused to get on that animal again. And they said that they could helicopter her out, but she would have to pay. Now, was there an era when this was private and people did have to pay?
Was that in Pima County?
No, yeah, I was the Arizona Daily Star newspaper.
I'm not sure of the circumstances. I just can, I mean, with fire departments, if they're going in and getting the subject out, there may be charges associated with that, but we never charge, and the deputies don't charge. So. This is, just wanted to point out, this is, this is Seven Falls in Bear Canyon, and on the red arrows are actually pointing out people there, but on the right there, you can see that's what it looked like in a flash flood. So that's, Seven Falls is another area where we do a lot of work. People are intoxicated and they fall.
Chris, do you ever, if you camp out with some people, do you take some kind of protection in case you run up with a bear or a mountain lion or something?
I don't have like bear spray that I carry. So No weapons. You know, just
Are you trained then on what to do if you encounter there?
yeah. We're that's part of our skills.
I'll show you later.
Once in a while, we don't ever go in typically exclusively for a dog, but once in a while, if the dog is, you know, if there are people in trouble and they have a pet with them, and or the pet's in trouble, we'll bring the dog out as well. This dog has its paws, we bandaged the paws because the dog wasn't in good shape, and we're taking him out in the stirrups basket. It's just so real quick, I know we're probably getting a little late here, but in terms of how an operation works, the incident commander, who's typically a deputy, once the call comes in, he's got to figure out a plan, right? And he's got to, our initial approach, number one, he has to do an investigation, and a quick investigation, but is there any reason to believe that the subject is not really where they say they were? So we've had some searches where we didn't know that they had gone to the bar instead of being out in the wilderness. So there's an investigative component to every mission that's handled by the Sheriff's Department. If there's any question or about you know, where the subject is, are they actually lost, what are the circumstances? You know, once in a while there are criminal situations or suicides, and so that kind of thing is where the deputies need to investigate that. Then they quickly make a determination whether they need to call us out. We'll put out the page, we'll get paged out. This type of search is what's called a route and location search. So they'll think about what are the most likely routes and locations that this subject could have gone. And, you know, so we have a last known position for them. Then we'll send teams on the different possible routes that they could have gone. And 85% of our missions are resolved within 12 hours. So this is through a route and location search. And 97% of them are resolved within 24 hours. In terms of how we communicate by radio. But I really want to talk about, real quick, what happens when we don't find them after 24 hours. And one of the unique things about our organization, which I'm a part, which is part of my, it's been an initiative of mine over the last several years, is developing our incident management team. And so when we can't find them after 24 hours, there's a whole new methodology that's employed. And we'll take a map and define our search area, and then divide that up into what are called segments. And then using software, we'll determine, based on a variety of factors, what is the highest probability location or segment that they might be in. And we have software that helps us prioritize where we think they might be. Then we'll put resources into those different segments, and we're assuming that our subject is not moving anymore. And that's where, when we're doing this kind of area search, we'll line about 7 people up, and they just sweep through the segment in a line, and then turn around and just work their way through. And this map shows, we'll have everybody tracking in a GPS app, so we know exactly where they are. And then us in the incident management team will see where they're at. And so we'll wind up with a segment like this, and that's a great, we can look at that and say, hey, this team did a great job in terms of how they covered it. But this is the kind of thing that we're doing once we can't find them after 24 hours. They're pretty rare, but it's a whole different operation. And I've been in several of these where we're bringing in resources from the other counties. SWAT comes in to help. It's all hands on deck. Department of Corrections. So, I've already mentioned. Let me just show you. So my pack is about 50 pounds. It's a little bit heavier than what.
Of course it
some
is.
people carry. But I use a chest harness, radio, I have flashlights, medical supplies in there, gloves, that kind of thing. And then, like I said, we have to be sustain ourselves for 24 hours, so we carry food. And let me just put this down. So I'll carry like a helmet. Anytime we have an air operation, we all have to use helmets. Carry a medical bag. And being an EMT, I'm able to provide some care that others can't, so I'll carry a little bit more. Carry a stethoscope, a BP cuff, a glucometer to take people's blood sugar, that kind of thing. And then I have food and water and other things like that. So,
How long did it take you to get used to carrying all that?
well, what I do is anytime I hike with this. So, so that's what I do. It takes a little while.
Yeah.
And that's one of the big challenges. People think, oh, I'm a great hiker, right? And then they come in, and you may have 50 pounds on you, plus you have additional gear that you have to take in. So I'll have this, and there have been missions where I've got to take, like a 30-pound oxygen tank in it or something, So, so you just need to be used to carrying a lot of weight, and you need to really get used to how do I maneuver, right? If I'm on a steep situation, I'm on the hillside or side of a mountain, and I've got this weight on me. You need to learn how to move so that you don't, kill yourself.
Why is the path curved shaped like that?
Oh, that's just it doesn't have a metal frame, so it's
Is it,
just how. I try and put all the heavy stuff in the bottom.
Which part are your shoulder straps on? In front of?
Where's the straps?
Yeah.
Are right here.
So then that bottom part is not stiff, like
No, it's not.
it's straight.
No,
Like
if this were
when
empty,
you're wearing it, it's
if
straight.
this were empty, yeah, it would be
Okay, all right,
flexible.
okay.
And I already talked about the different environments that we operate in. One other thing we do is we also do medical support at like the 24-hour in the Old Pueblo bike race, or the tour of the White Mountains. So there's several bike races around the state where we also do medical support. Any questions? I know I'm about out of time.
Do you want to go back to that question and ask about your most difficult rescue operation?
Well, the Tanque Verde Canyon, that one was really challenging. We couldn't get out of the canyon for about 3 or 4 hours because of the flash flood. The German one, I was also involved in the biggest search in Pima County out of the last several decades was in 2016. And that first night, this was a hiker who had been in Sabino Canyon. He was just going to take a short hike before work. There was incorrect cell phone forensics that had him going up Sabino Canyon, but also there's Bear Canyon, and me and one other guy, I was out for about 17 hours that night looking for him, and we did about 20 miles up Bear Canyon, back down through Sabino Canyon. It turns out we actually walked by him, but unfortunately he was face down he couldn't swim. And so we think he took a wrong turn in Bear Canyon, wound up by a pool, slippery rocks, fell in. We found him. I was on scene to recover the body. He was face down in a pool. So that was a long. And I wound up 4 or 5 days. That went on for about 7 or 8 days before we found him. So that was another one. I've done one, there's one on Mount Lemon with where we were worried. It was me and this is another point. Sometimes you'll have multiple calls going. And this particular night, we had a call lower on the mountain, and then we heard about a party that had started low, in good weather, and they were going up Mount Lemon where there was snow at the top. And it was dark, they were out of, didn't have a light or food or warm clothing, so we were really worried about them. They were very hypothermic when one of the guy got to them, but that was one where we were really concerned about, you know, their survival. They made it out okay.
Cell phones, how the use of cell phones and us carrying a phone, how has that related to survivability in the wilderness?
It's a double-edged sword. On the one hand, with cell phone forensics, we can locate, can triangulate on a cellular location. On the other hand, it often creates a false sense of confidence for people when they're going out. Oh, I've got my cell phone. We don't have cell coverage everywhere,
Right.
you know, particularly up on the mountain. Lots of dead zones. But, so
What is,
we can actually send them a text with a link in it, and they tap on the text, and then that gives us their location. So they don't know where they're at. They don't recognize anywhere. We send them a we call it a find me link. They tap on it, and then we know exactly where they're at based on the GPS.
what are 3 things you wish everybody knew about being out in the wilderness from your... No, really. As a rescuer, what are 3 things you wish everybody knew before you go on a hike?
I mean, you don't want to hike alone, right? You want to let somebody know where you're going. And then we have something called the 10 essentials that you ought to carry on every hike.
I just asked for 3.
Adequate water, you know, a light source, be prepared for inclement weather, a map, you know where you're going. You know, so those are some of the key things. Food. Do you want me to take more questions, or should we?
We're probably there.
Okay.
We're probably there.
You can come up and ask me questions afterwards if I didn't get to you.
Can we express our thanks?
And he didn't even mention all the times he's rescued me in worship.